Traditionally, it takes about 10 to 15 years for the FDA to approve a vaccine. However, recently, there's been a need for speed when it comes to overall drug development. In this video, I'll be discussing Operation Warp Speed, which is a Trump administration effort to speed the overall development of a vaccine for COVID-19 and get a vaccine available to the public by January 2021. Now, there's a lot of steps involved in it, and I'll be discussing how the FDA allows for the fast tracking of drugs. So I hope you guys enjoy. Let's say we had all the time in the world. We're looking at 2036 as the distribution date for a vaccine for COVID-19. Now, that's under the traditional route. In order to do so, the FDA can allow things like waiving some regulatory steps, speeding through the application process. So I'll be getting into that specific process for making a vaccine so you can get a better understanding of each trial and each step. However, I don't need to tell you that, this speeding up of the vaccine making process is like condensing 10 years of med school into like 1 year. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the steps for making a vaccine. The first step is academic research. And during this, you're going to study the genetic sequence of the virus, what lineage or what family tree is this virus coming from. You're going to see how is it transmitted. Since COVID-19 is very similar to SARS, also known as SARS COV-1, and shares an 86% genetic match, there's a lot of data and research from then that has aided and guided researchers today in order to speed up the academic research and shrink that time period needed. So, for example, it took about 1 month to sequence the genetic code for COVID-19, also known as SARS COV-2, and it took about 5 months to genetically sequence the code for SARS back in 2002. The reason why genetic sequencing and research is important early on and to do it quickly is because it allows you to create diagnostic testing, which is really good because if you don't diagnostic test, then you don't know who has the virus and you don't know how to track it properly. And on top of that, it also allows you to track the mutation rates, develop different tests such as antibody tests. It gives you a lot of information and also even create a vaccine. So that's the academic research phase. Next is the preclinical phase, which you can kind of think of as the animal testing phase, which is when you test the vaccine and different solutions and different dosages on animals such as mice, or monkeys, pigs, or an animal just to determine the effectiveness and safety of the vaccine and to determine if you're actually getting an immune response or not. So before then, you don't test on humans normally, but under the fast track route, you can actually skip this phase altogether, or you can run it alongside a human trial, which is phase 1. And yes, if you're wondering, is this ethical or not? There is a debate going on, and I'm not going to go into detail about it. I personally feel like it's risky. Here is a list of 14 companies that are going to begin or have already begun phase 1. And as you can see, it's kind of spread out. During this phase, a few dozen healthy young volunteers, usually between the ages of 20 to 45, are randomly selected to get the vaccine, and some are randomly selected to get a placebo. If volunteers develop some harmful side effects, and it's pretty obvious that they're getting infected from COVID-19, regardless if they were vaccinated or not, then what happens is the vaccine candidate is canceled and it doesn't move on further from there. If the vaccine is shown to be effective, let's say these people aren't getting the virus in the community, or let's say that there is no side effects and they develop an antibody response, so an immune response, then you move to phase 2 because these are positive results. Moderna Therapeutics is so far the only company that has completed phase 1 trials, and they published positive results on May 18th. Their vaccine is known as mRNA 1273. They're a brand new company, 2016, 2014. They haven't been around that long. They're the front runner right now. They're a relatively small company. In phase 2, hundreds of volunteers are recruited, and that often includes members of at-risk groups, just to see how effective the vaccine is in the general population. So at risk could include people with heart conditions, or say they've had a past stroke. It could be anything really. Just you want to see that the vaccine is actually working for everyone. Something you may have noticed earlier is that the manufacturing process, say the building facilities and the production phase, actually overlaps with phase 2. Now, that's actually exactly what's happening. Moderna signed a 10-year manufacturing agreement with Lonza, a Swiss pharma and chemical company, on May 1st to begin establishing production sites. So basically, the companies are going to start the manufacturing process before even fully knowing if the vaccines work. So essentially, this is a huge gamble. Let's say you produce a vaccine that was not shown to be safe or effective, then you essentially have millions of useless batches, and those have to be thrown away. But on the flip side, if the results are safe and effective, let's say by phase 3, which I'll be getting to in a little bit, the vaccine isn't having negative side effects on thousands of people, and it's having a proper immune response that prevents people from getting infected, then you don't have to then wait to manufacture the vaccine, which could take another, say, 6 months to a year. And here's a video of Dr. Anthony Fauci talking on NBC News on the matter.
Well, no, the administration has confirmed that it has a program called Operation Warp Speed. That's what the administration is calling it, with, according to reports, the goal to speed the timeline for a vaccine to develop hundreds of millions of doses to be ready by January.
We're going to safely and carefully, but as quickly as we possibly can, try and get an answer as to whether it works and is safe. And if so, we're going to start ramping up production with the companies involved. And you do that at risk. In other words, you don't wait until you get an answer before you start manufacturing. You, at risk, proactively start making it, assuming it's going to work. And if it does, then you could scale up and hopefully get to that timeline. So we want to go quickly, but we want to make sure it's safe and it's effective. I think that is doable.
That's a big,
if things fall in the right place. Yeah.
Okay, so continuing off this matter of manufacturing and the government subsidizing these pharma companies, the US has signed contracts with Moderna Therapeutics for $486 million to ensure that millions of doses are produced for Americans. There's also $1 billion contract that was done with Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca. AstraZeneca works for Oxford University in England. Okay, now getting to phase 3. It's similar to phase 2, except now you're really ramping up the participants. So the volunteers are in the hundreds of thousands. And the reason that you ramp up the number of volunteers is because you want to test the vaccine and you want to make sure that the side effects aren't affecting, say, 1 in every 10,000 people. Because in a population of, say, 300 million Americans, you're going to get side effects in 30,000 Americans. So checking for large clinical trials like this to see if there's any side effects is really good, because you're avoiding side effects that can impact a significant proportion of people. So again, even though these side effects might be rare, 1 in every 10,000, you want to rule them out because they can have some really negative consequences. This can be from maybe faulty manufacturing. This can be from, say, the solution triggers some type of negative immune response. It's happened in the past with, I believe, the polio vaccine in the 50s, because manufacturing was not done properly. So that's my concern when it comes to manufacturing done in an accelerated process, because sometimes the vaccine might be safe and effective, but the manufacturing process can have its own consequences in that something was done wrong and now it's negatively affecting some people. The FDA has allowed for the merging of phase 2 and phase 3 clinical trials, meaning that instead of running hundreds of participants in phase 2, you can just kind of have hundreds of thousands of participants just from the get-go. You can kind of skip phase 2. And that's just one way of fast tracking things. And I'm sure some companies might do this. Okay, so that's a brief overview of the vaccine making process. I didn't get into detail about the paperwork involved, the application process, or even the technologies involved in making these vaccines. But it kind of gives you a quick summary on the task at hand in order to make a vaccine as quickly as possible and how it compares to a traditional route. So maybe we'll get lucky. Operation Warp Speed wants to approve of at least, I believe, 6 to 10 companies for the manufacturing process to be done alongside phase 2 and phase 3 clinical trials. So let's say only 2 out of the, say, 7 are found to be effective and safe, then you're going to have something that works and it's found relatively safe and effective, and you're going to have it quickly to you. I hope that that's the case. I hope that it's safe and effective and things aren't being overlooked, because I'm not a huge fan of science moving quickly. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them off in the comment section below. I know I sped through this and it's not easy to take all of this in at once. I'll be happy to answer any questions. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and like this video. I really appreciate that. It helps my channel grow, and I'll see you next time.